The January 6 committee hearings in the US have been absorbing, fascinating, revealing about what happened when that insurrection attempted to wrest control of the democratic process in the US at Donald Trump's urging. But in the meantime, he's been busy. He's not only still the most formidable fundraiser in US politics, he's still the front runner for the Republican nomination for the presidency at the 2024 election. But as we learned also from Axios, which is a US media outlet, and the reporter Jonathan Swan, an Aussie who's made good in DC, Donald Trump has established an entire ecosystem of right-wing organisations that have been preparing for him a prepared, vetted workforce of policy officials who could take control of the US government in the event that he is re-elected. Now, we know that unlike our system, where almost all of the public, in fact, all of the public service is supposed to be rigorously apolitical, in the US there's a top echelon of 4,000 positions in the public service that's reserved for political appointments. Well, Trump had that last time and yet found it frustrating. He complained that there was what he called a deep state of officials that he couldn't get traction on. This time he doesn't want to repeat that mistake. And what Swan's reporting in Axios this week tells us is that this grouping, this very large grouping of people, Donald Trump wants ready to fill not only the top 4,000 policy jobs in the public service should he win, but many thousands more to go much deeper using an untested mechanism called Schedule F to remove a whole echelon of public servants who are supposed to be permanent and untouchable. But he wants to really cement his control and get his way over US policy. So that's what he's been working on. So the assumption that Trump was just a bad dream who came and went and thank God it's over, he has other plans.
It looks like he'll be sticking around for some time to come. What might another term of a Trump presidency mean for Australia, its relations with the US and China and its defence strategy?
Yeah, well, as recently as Saturday in the US at a rally in Florida, Yvonne, Donald Trump said there that in the event that NATO were attacked by Russia, he said, "I will not defend you." That's what he told the rally. He said, as in, I'm talking to NATO, "I will not defend you." He's also recently complained that the US is spending too much money in support of Ukraine against Putin's war. So Donald Trump evidently has retained his soft spot for Vladimir Putin. Evidently, he's retained his scepticism or outright hostility to US allies and alliances. Australia got off pretty lightly from the Trump administration last time around. Australia, together with Israel, were the only US allies really that managed to get away unmolested from those 4 years of Trump. But next time around, we can't expect him to be supportive of any US ally. And some of his officials from then and now have said that while in general he had been pretty tough on China, that he would be prepared to trade with China, to do a deal with China, so that Australia could perhaps be left on a limb in a hostile situation with China when Donald Trump's busy cutting a side deal with Xi Jinping to leave Australia and maybe other allies isolated and not wanting to defend Taiwan, certainly. So the potential for Australia, which has based its entire strategic and national security policy and framework around a reliable US alliance, there is tremendous risk there for Australia, which has not thought about the repercussions if we are to come up against, once again, a Donald Trump administration in Washington, which is even more determined to deliver on his America First ideology.
Meanwhile, Peter, the US seems to have got itself into a bit of a bind, with Joe Biden saying House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visiting Taiwan next month might not be such a good idea, but it'll be hard to back out of this one now.
Well, that's exactly right, Yvonne, because while Nancy Pelosi did announce that she was intending to visit Taiwan, that's one thing. For the White House to say we don't think that's necessarily a terribly wise thing because it would be provocative and might unsettle the delicate status quo between Beijing and Taiwan. It's now gone another step where Beijing has warned very explicitly, in fact, officially, publicly, the Foreign Ministry spokesman has said that the US would produce, that China would produce a strong response and possibly a military response to a Nancy Pelosi visit to Taiwan. That has now created exactly the pickle where if Nancy Pelosi now realises that it would be too provocative, and Paul Keating has called it reckless and foolish, for example, it would look as if she were backing down to Chinese threats, which would then look as if the US was making Taiwan policy courtesy of Beijing. So that would be a pretty bad idea, which would then presumably embolden China. And yet, on the other hand, if she goes ahead with the visit to Taiwan, it does risk provoking who knows what sort of incident where China, which has already been running increasingly large and regular numbers of air and navy sorties against the island of Taiwan in reconnaissance and intimidatory measures, could step that up or take something even more direct, maybe, at the extreme, trying to prevent Nancy Pelosi's plane from landing in Taiwan, which of course Beijing claims as sovereign mainland Chinese territory.
A really difficult one for Washington there. Peter Hartcher, good to get your thoughts as always. Thank you.
Pleasure, Yvonne.